that becomes a point when we find in Army learning, we talk about collaboration. I really hate using the term sometimes because it gets overused, but we do a lot of collaboration between each other. I know what my good friend Captain Yardley, because we were in career course together, we served together, and Captain Pruitt, he's new in my unit, but we got a problem, I got a unique problem. What I'm going to do? I'm going to contact the both of them and try to figure out what is the best way to do it, check? Because I'm going to leverage that. That's collaboration. We've always done that. So Army learning, you'll see right exactly is what we were changing to within TRADOC circa 2009 to 2010. General Dempsey even asked us a question when we were doing the Captain's Course redesign. He said, why is it that I'm taking safety? Why am I taking this safety course? What is the difference in it from what I took for safety, which is mandatory training, from when I was a lieutenant to now that I'm a 4-star general? Some of us were sitting there going, you know, we're asking the same thing. What's the difference in the type presentation? Even to the point of why do we take mandatory training, and I've just had it, say OPSEC, now TARP, which used to be SAETA. I just had that 2 months before I came to this daggum course. Why am I doing it again? Taking up more of my time. It's asking the hard questions. So one of the things that happened in the Army Learning Model was for folks to go through a redesign approach, not only to find out what was really useful in the utility, but the other one was, where was it in the mix? You have a normal TRADOC Common Core, but then you have what? A branch-specific Common Core. What's the difference? Those are some of the hard questions that we had to answer as a working group. And guess what normally happens too? We all stake out our what?
Our territory.
Our own territory. When it comes to why am I teaching it? What importance? The other one is, what do I need in DL that I can push over there? This is where when we're talking about the school for brick without bricks and mortar, is to what can I transfer to DL? Not everything can transfer to DL because it costs you a lot of money.
And is ineffective.
Let me go back. I will challenge you on that one.
Ready for the challenge. Let's go.
All right. Anybody remember what was called the Tech Tape Machine? Tech Tape. T-E-C. Tape Machine. No, it wasn't a typewriter. Some of you, if you came in the Army in the 1970s and 80s, that daggone thing set is our little training room. It had a little spool on it. And it would sit there and it would spin around. You could watch it visual. And check. In fact, Google it. You'll see it. It's a tape machine. And it had your individual skills and tasks by MOS. I used that. That was a form of distance learning. I used that as a young ROTC cadet, getting ready to go be a commission, to go through all my tasks that was resident as an infantry officer. Such that when I showed up to the actual course, I was way ahead of my peers. I didn't have it for hands-on. I already knew. So that was a first form. But now let's go a little bit closer. A few months ago, well, a couple of years ago, I was flying from Kansas City going down to Virginia, going back to Fort Eustis. Notice I said useless, not useless. Okay? And while I'm there, I see these guys with ACU-type backpacks on. I'm sitting there and I'm going like, yeah, they don't look as well worn as most of the other folks I see coming through here all the time. Because thank you for your service. You look worn when you're going through. You've been in the battle. You've been in the combat. You don't have the same expression that you left with. And you never will. Just go be up front. And they didn't look that way. I said, well, I know they're not special ops, because special ops guys I know are a little bit more mature. All right? So I get on the plane, and all of a sudden I got my lanyard on, and I'm sitting there, it says, go Army, it says Army. they're sitting right beside a couple of them are. They said, "Sir, you in the Army?" I said, "No." I said, "I spent a few days in the Army." He says, "Oh, okay. What else was you?" I said, 11 Bravo, 92 Alpha. "Oh, you were an infantryman with quartermaster." Well, first thing is, yes, sometimes my radar goes up when somebody starts asking me questions. I said, "Oh, yeah. Where are you stationed?" I said, "Well, Fort Campbell, Europe, what all." "Oh, really? How was that?" "Really great." "Why? What year did you come in?" Started telling them. "Oh, okay." Mind you, these were new recruits. They had just left the MEP station in Kansas City on their way to Fort Benning, Georgia to start basic training for OSU. The reason I bring that up to you is because they had been given a DVD that had the traditions, customs, and courtesies within the U.S. military. So such that when they got to their duty station, they were ready. They already had a good knowledge base. There are about 5 of them. One of them would have been designated as the leader.
Right.
And they got it. He was going through the airport like little ducks in a row. He said, "All right, now come on now." They all go out like little ducks in a row in Atlanta, moving along. Okay. Now think about it. That's different from what, and I always show sometimes when I get a chance, film clip from Forrest Gump. When they come on and somebody got on the bus and they was calling your name that wasn't given to you. Okay? That had changed. One, because we had empowered the youth to go and do that. They're already empowered. Number 2 is that distance learning had occurred because it was appropriate to the actual training experience. So what you do, when you're saying it, it is true to a point. If the training is not related, if it is, I'm going to turn it off. If you look at it right now, distance learning, and talk about its effectiveness, on some of our mandatory training, if you do not score, you got to take the entire test again. Check.
That's what I mean by ineffective. Because most times, when you do that training, just click, 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 and you can take the test as many times as you need to. So there really, I'm concerned that there really is no learning being transferred.
That's correct.
We go through the slides. Okay, the one that comes up when you got to get the little people in the office, you got to click on the disc and.
That's the I.
Yeah, it's like, really?
Okay.
You come back and ask somebody a question about any of the content. The majority of the people, there are those exceptions, really cannot regurgitate or reflect on anything that they learn because it becomes just part of that thing. So I think at some point we got to figure out what the happy medium is. Anything that's done, has to, in my opinion, has to be somewhat reinforced at a later point to ensure that that learning is transferred.
And that is a critical point, just what you said, right on the nose.
You don't leave your cell phone out on the table, that's why I don't
You don't let your battle buddy in.
Yeah.
You don't let your battle buddy
They don't
in.
have their card, don't let them in.
Don't let them in. What else happens? If you look at it now on certain ones that you take, it'll actually allow you to take the pretest. And if you match the pretest, you don't go through the course because what the learning has already been transferred and it's doing what? It's a refresher.
And not to mention the TARP, mandatory TARP training. I don't know how to do it.
Insulation-wise.
But we go to the auditorium and the person stands up and say, "I got 175 slides and we're going to get you them in an hour." But you've been trained.
Yeah.
You leave out going, "What is TARP stand for?"
Let's start there. All right.
Yeah.
So, moving around along. All right. We notice it is now training, education, and experience. That's what we're looking at, the Army Learning. Now, I'm going to share something with you. As I always tell them, a curveball that I always give to my quality assurance evaluator counterparts. The OE guys will probably be Mr. Ward or Mr. McNeil. And they always tease me because I train them both. Well, one used to be my boss, Mr. Ward. Darryl was my boss at one time, and he would come back out, and I always tell him to do it. He'll say, "Walt, you been out of the SSI?" "Yeah." "When did you go?" And I'll tell him, because I always give him a report, stand back, and I say, "This is what I taught, this is how I interject folks' work. And if you guys fall short on me, I'm going to come back after all of you, all right?" But I'm not making you an OE expert. But one of the things that happened is we said, does experience come before training? Let me give you a way to look at that. One of our counterparts told us that when he was in Iraq, he says we were manning a checkpoint. And he says, while we're at this checkpoint, he said, we looked around and one of the young privates turned around and looked at him and he says, sir, he says, this car that's approaching way up the road there, he says, I don't like the way it looks. He says, the way the guy is driving, the way the car is sitting, the way it's moving towards us, it doesn't look right. That kid had come from South Central LA. Because of drive-by shootings and his experience to survive in that type of an environment, he understood and his knowledge transferred to that operational environment that he was able to pick up and say something isn't right. Well, some of us call that intuition. Folks that's been out, that grew up on the farms and in the rural areas, you can tell when something ain't right in the woods. It just doesn't sound right. There's not enough noise. There are things that happen. That's one of the things that make America great with its military is we come from varying experiences. And we can say, you know, I'm the guy from an urban area. Something don't look right. Don't chase it down this street because if you do, this is what's going to probably happen. Or, you know, when you're going out, don't go that way. Why? The brush is turned the wrong way. This is why we survived so many years. And we're an effective fighting force. Because of that, that young man's experience was what was integrated with his training for them to react, which they later found out that it was a suicide bomb. That's how that works. So that is a way to start looking at it and doing that knowledge transfer. EST 2000. Most of you had experience with it. It's a game. We learned from the 1990s, some of you may recall, that you had a lot of school shootings. In the aftermath, we found out that a lot of those kids who were not raised on a farm with a weapon had picked up how to lead a target and how to shoot by playing an Atari game. Those simple games taught us how to shoot. There's one called Dungeons and something else that they had, Dungeons and Dragons, or I forget what it was. That was a small unit tactic game. That's why the gaming industry now within the military, we look at gaming as part of integrated architecture because it's an effective tool. So when we look at different tools and things that can be used to enhance the training, the dynamics of training and education. All right? So, global learning outcomes. This has changed. This was something that when I was up at CASCOM, for example, I had to make an on-the-fly adaptation because I didn't have the slides available at that time because this had changed within the Army learning model. It changed from what we call the 21st century core competencies to the learning outcomes. If you really look at that, what they did is expanded the list and categorized it. You will see as you take a look at some of this that it has OE written all over it. Some folks always say, oh no, it isn't. We came up with it. I said, screw that. I said, tell me what it really means. What really drove that? You no longer see just soldiers. It says soldiers and what?
Army civilians.
Army civilians. That should be a clip that tells you automatically that civilians are doing what? Deploying the theater and assisting. We deal in what? Joint interagency, intergovernmental type of situations. That's why if you look at FM30 and you look at it says consolidated zone in an area which used to be support zone, it's because you got what? A lot of other activities that are critical to us being able to do mission. There are a lot of other civilians, contractors and DA civilians and DOD civilians that are in the area providing info, providing support. We're one team. So we have to train everybody. All right, let's move along. ELA, when you look at for the human dimension, and if you look at these and you look at what we gave you as the 5 basic domains and everything else, you will see a correlation of that. You see where it ties to cyber. You see where it ties to us being able to do other type missions. That's why, and you'll hear me say right quick, that it is one team, one fight. We used to say to folks that was in the rear area, there's no rear area. Just be upfront. There's an area where we support each other. There's no really real area because that was more linear. This is the goal of OE. This is the whole goal. To make us proactive. When I gave you that little practical exercise or that little scenario before the break, that was to get us to thinking what? How do we become proactive versus reactive? I look at this before I hit the area, so I do what? Understand. Think of OE in this context. I know a few of us in here may be football fans or sports enthusiasts, whether it's baseball or whatever. You go through preseason, or better yet, if you're in a band and music, you go through what? Before you get to the actual performance, you do a lot of rehearsals. And you do what? Variations. If you look at preseason football, what is it really doing? Assessing the talent, but it's doing what? Giving the general conditions of what they expect during the season. That's what we're doing now, is giving those general problem sets so by the time you get ready to deploy to an area, the learning curve is flat. I don't need a steep learning curve to try to get ready. I need it flat enough that the only thing you have to do is a few days of training or orientation or something, and you're ready to go. You're full tilt boogie. Well, let's see what happens. Now, this is not my office. This is not my desk. However, it does have some resemblance. One reason being is, well, a couple of reasons. One, it keeps people from going on my desk taking things. It helps me to avoid drive-by taskings from my boss, even though he does have a way of doing it by email. And the other one is, I can find it, but you can't. Okay? But when we understand the variables, what OE does is, when I talked about signing the situation up, it brings clarity to the situation. When you're doing it as a facilitator in a class, an instructor facilitator, one of the things that will happen is you're handling arguments. I witnessed one as a quality assurance team member, and I was at Fort Leonard. And you know how you can have a class, and you get the folks that get the argument in the class over what happened downrange, and they had these two guys, and they were going at it. And it was getting to the point where one about to say, man, you guys, your unit was all screwed up. That's why y'all couldn't do this. And they were going back and forth why something happened. But the instructor facilitator knew the operational variables such that he phrased the questions to them, calming them down, refocusing them, and he used operational variables without even mentioning a one. Now, at that time, we had 11 variables versus 8. And he was going through it, he was walking it down, such to a point when it ended up, the reason one action happened better and had better results than the other one was technology. It was a 240 machine gun. One unit had it, along with the modules, and the other one didn't. That was the real difference. So you see, you can actually phrase things just like I was doing with you with Korea and start doing what? Taking you through variations. I took you through neo intentional because a lot of folks haven't had that experience. When we deal with our joint partners, being the Marine Corps, they have that particular mission set because they have to evacuate people all the time. Be prepared. That's part of the mission set. Because they're providing security to get folks back out. So you see, that's the thing that when we start working with them, guess what's going to happen? We have to be aware of what their capabilities are. So let's take a quick look at what to think versus how to think. I'll let you chew on that for just a moment. What to think versus how to think. Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Learned that in 1958. Why did they do that? Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, conjunction, junction. Why? Because that was a way to make sure I got past that other thing. I before E. C. Why does that happen? I don't know. I just remember that. That's how I passed the test. I got an A. Hey, I came home with an A on the report card. Mom and Dad, I get some more candy. Yay! Okay? Why? Because I'm always memorizing facts to solve future problems. If I understand what the nature of that rule is, I do what? I can handle new problems. In fact, I create new solutions. Somewhere below, I want to say it was IBM years ago, had a commercial, they said, what if? It was two powerful words. What if? When you're doing software designing, it is what if. That's why the software industry learns. They actually tell you, we learn by failure. Failure is a part of our business because it leads to spiral design. It doesn't work, we release another version. It keeps the customer happy. Now, some of us may cry about Windows 10. Windows 10 does work good. It's when you put it on an Army system that gets all messed up because of all the security layers you have to go through. If you get an actual, and I'll tell you this, go and get a commercial version of Windows 10 and put it on your home computer. You'll find out that's a very powerful piece of operating system. It just causes us problems because we're the military. We got to put all these security layers on it and stuff. Can't get off the soapbox. Anyway, but what? This is how we're trying to think, scientifically versus non-science facts. I know facts, but I don't understand why. I know I'm supposed to fill out this form, but I don't know what the critical elements on the form are. What is really required? One of the things that we were taught on the supply side of the house as a quartermaster is the fund code means a whole lot. If you got the right fund code, 9 times out of 10, the system is going to trigger the system to go through because the item manager has to go through and look and they're verifying key things. But the fund code, can I purchase this? That's what's going to drive it. So, let's move along. Change. The reason I'm bringing this up, we social media be adaptable. This slide is important for one thing, to take away in an operational environment when we talk about gray areas. The Secret Service teaches their agents what a dollar bill looks like correctly before they give them a counterfeit bill. Say that very slowly again. The Secret Service teaches their agents to know what a good dollar bill looks like, what is right, before they give them the counterfeit bill. In this relationship, you look at the core values and the core principles, you look at the Army values. These are things that are constants that are built there so we know how to act in a given situation. When you saw the phrase or the word that said ambiguous, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put you in a gray area where you don't know what right really looks like, and you've got to make a judgment. This led to part of the question in the dialogue yesterday we had on the 15-6, because there are things that I'm going to put you in to make sure it's a gray area. You hesitate. You don't make the right decision. Also, as I always tell folks, if you look at the Marine Corps, and this isn't knocking in the Army, if you look at the Marine Corps, when they're going through their initial entry training, stress a lot on values, what it means to be a Marine. And they talk about the whole thing to the crucible in their, what we consider basic combat training. One of my nephews is, as he said, he says, I'm never a former Marine. He said, I'm always a Marine. That's the language they talk. And it doesn't mean they're so much better than we are, but what? They're teaching the core principles and values that they know how they're supposed to act. That when they violate that rule, it is no doubt that you're going to see the baby. That's what we have to get to in our heart. That's what we have to get through to what we do in our daily branch. That's the esprit du corps. When we go ahead, though, we see what? Constants. And another thing, reading. To be a good writer, you must become a good reader. Always challenge folks. what is on your desk that you're reading today. Reading does a lot with us in the fact that it teaches us how various writing styles, how authors are conveying points. You can look at things on TV. I used to watch as a kid. I still do. I watch folks, how they go through and handle interviews and everything else. That gives you a sense of how they do it. Various TV stations, what's the trick questions, what are they trying to do. Techniques is how they write to answer questions. Because it helps in how you write. And if you notice, you got kids with 4.0 averages, but they write like they text. Another one is the fact that our education system, we took out cursive writing. Now, some folks said that they were going along, you had some education. Cursive writing isn't really used anymore. It's not really any good. Cursive writing gives you a what? Personal identification. Can it be imitated? Yes. But there are certain things that you do in your handwriting that is applicable to you. When I signed the rental car agreement on Monday night, I looked at it and said, man, dude, that signature is all screwed up. However, I looked at it and I said, my loops at the way I make it and how I write has a unique identification to it. 3 letters out of my name, you could actually go through, and if I was signing on that, somebody else was signing, they could not imitate it. And if they did, the only one that could do it is my wife, and she wasn't with me. And she's learned after being married to me for so long how I do it. And I said, you still don't make it right because I sign it every now and then different. Okay? But there's another important reason why. Anybody in here want to guess what happens when you do cursive writing?
Makes your mind work with different locations.
Sure does. My wife dealt with early childhood education. And in the Born to Learn curriculum, which starts at about 3 months, you'd be surprised at how a child develops and how early they develop. The fine motor skill, which is very important, starts to connect with the synapses in the brain. So you remember things a lot better. If you're doing briefings, I'll do briefings sometime. I'll sit down and I can do it and type on the screen. It's what we call buttonology, as one of my friends calls it. He says, because I'm trying to figure out what button to punch. When I do it with signing, it's not button. I don't figure out which way to do it. I just write it out. Even if I print. Yes, ma'am.
But that's not really universal. That's kind of individual. So, you know, part of that whole learning dynamic is trying to absorb, embrace the different types of learning. Some people learn by seeing, the visual learning. Some by they kind of study. So when you get into, because we've gotten into arguments with academia people about the whole cursive writing thing, and they offer some very strong arguments. So really, it's a left against the right. And I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. But we always have a problem trying to reach common ground because, like you said, everybody territorial. Right. This is my stance, and I think everybody should see things the way that I see it. Not the next one conflict comes.
Correct. And one of the other problems is that's the challenge. When you look at how folks are doing their point now, what do we do when we get ready to sign out? We use a digital certificate. Did you know that the Army, this is commercial break, did you know the Army is rethinking how they do with the digital certificates because it can be compromised? Such that we can end up with another cat card down the pipe?
Yeah, I think it can be compromised.
Yes. Even we have the chips now, if you look at it on your credit card, it has the chip.
It can be cloned.
Okay, it can't be cloned, but one of the things is, and I asked the folks as I was going overseas, I said, okay, I need to call the bank and everybody else and let them know that I'm doing overseas travel. The lady said, no, you don't need to. So why? She said, because you have a chip. That's a security provision. But like anything else, every so often, because of technology, because of things that change in the operational environment, we change how we do business. My handwriting don't. The whole thing. So you got a good point. It is somewhere in between. But right now, the thing in Army learning and the whole back is to take advantage and leverage these young soldiers coming in. They don't learn the same way we do. They're not facing it. They're not facing it. That's why I gave you tape machines. Much faster. You bring something out like that now, they look at you, man, what are you talking about? In fact, they look at a phone right now, some of them, they go, that's in a museum somewhere. Okay? And it ain't been that long ago. So you can see exactly here one of the things we're talking about. Notice what General Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, says. When he talks there, by reading you learn through others' experiences. This is where when we talk about lessons learned, this is where we talk about actual lessons learned is observations, insights, and lessons. Because we have observations, we have insights, lessons learned requires vetting in terms of longer time before you get in the classroom. So what happens is you learn through other experiences. How did they do that? What's the difference in why that worked then, but it doesn't work now? Or the reverse. It didn't work for that person, but it works now. Why? Technology sometimes is the difference. Yes, sir?
I was never really a big reader during my Army career, but since retiring, with the new technology, you have that library down there, and I have a 30-minute commute. And so you're able to listen to CDs, and then also things like Overdrive, the app, where you go down to the MWR library. I can pull anything for free, audiobook off of there, and then hook it into my audio system in the car, and I've read like 70 books in a couple of years. So I mean, that never would have happened without technology for me.
It's good. So you can see you can learn. In fact, if you look at a lot of courses now, I want to offer this up to you. Have you noticed in some of the courses, if you came through with that particular course, you went from 8 to 5 o'clock in the evening, 1700. Now they go from 8 to 12. But what happens with those other hours? What are those other hours supposed to be used for?
Reflection.
Reflection. Let's expand some more. What happens during that reflection? Or supposed to happen during that reflection? Come on now, work with me now, all right? Y'all ain't gonna get no other break. I'm gonna hold you and make your bladders blow up. All right? Reading and discussing. You start collaborating. You get with this time that you can get with your teammates. I saw it yesterday when I was watching it in the classroom. Some of the guys came out of a class. They came out, 2 of them, they got together. One had a smartphone. He's sitting there, he's going over stuff. They were comparing notes. Continuous learning. Now, we know some of them take a break and they go and but let's just put it. They'll be the ones that will struggle in some cases. Some of them, they're not, they're bored. So this is a way that you do what? Getting them to read. Get them to read other material.